双语音标领航，注音阅读启蒙，叶兴阳有声读物。
Gypsy Dictionary by George Borrow. Romano Lavolil. Word Book of the Romany, or English Gypsy language, with specimens of Gypsy poetry, and an account of certain gypseries or places inhabited by them, and of various things relating to Gypsy life in England, by George Borrow. Contents: The English Gypsy language. Romano Lavolil. Word Book of the Romany. Rhymed list of Gypsy verbs. Bataille roquerpines. Little sayings. Coutures of me dibbles lil. Chived. Adre romains. Pieces of scripture cast into Romany. The Lord's Prayer in the Gypsy dialect of Transylvania. Lil of Romano Ginipen. Book of the Wisdom of the Egyptians. Romain Navier of Thames and Gavier. Gypsy names of countries and towns. Thomas Rossermescro, or Thomas Hearn. Cocytus arterus. Meng. Prala. Beg on. Brother. English Gypsy songs. Welling Catani. The Gypsy Meeting. Lelling Cappy. Making a Fortune. The DUI Chailer. The Two Gypsies. Miro Romanici. My Roman Lass. Ava. Chi. Yes. My Girl. The Temesco Rye. The Youthful Earl. Camogilly. Love Song. Tugnes Amanda. Woe is me. The Rye and the Ron. The Squire and Lady. Romany Sutter Gilly. Gypsy Lullaby. Sharafi Kraliasa. Our Blessed Queen. Plastra Lesti. Run for It. Foreign Gypsy Songs. The Romany Songstress. Larigi. The Frere. Malbrun. Malbrook. The English Gypsies. Tugne Bishore. Sorrowful Years. Their History. Gypsy Names. Fortune-telling. The Huckney. Coring. Metropolitan Gypseries. Wandsworth. The Potteries. The Mount. Riley Boswell. Kirk Yet Home. Can you roker Romany? Can you play the Bosch? Can you jowl adre the Sterapen? Can you chin the cost? Can you speak the Roman tongue? Can you play the fiddle? Can you eat the prison loaf? Can you cut and whittle? The author of the present work wishes to state that the vocabulary, which forms part of it, has existed in manuscript for many years. It is one of several vocabularies of various dialects of the Gypsy tongue, made by him in different countries. The most considerable, that of the dialect of the Zincali or Rumageles Romani Chals of Spain, was published in the year 1841. Amongst those which remain unpublished is one of the Transylvanian Gypsy, made principally at Kalosvar in the year 1844. December 1, 1873. The English Gypsy language. The Gypsies of England call their language, as the Gypsies of many other countries call theirs, Romany or Romanes, a word either derived from the Indian ram or Rama, which signifies a husband, or from the town Rome, which took its name either from the Indian ram, or from the Gallic word ram, which is nearly tantamount to husband or man, for as the Indian ram means a husband or man, so does the Gallic palm signify that which constitutes a man and enables him to become a husband. Before entering on the subject of the English Gypsy, I may perhaps be expected to say something about the original Gypsy tongue. It is, however, very difficult to say, with certainty, anything on the subject. There can be no doubt that a veritable Gypsy tongue at one time existed, but that it at present exists there is great doubt indeed. The probability is that the Gypsy at present exists only in dialects more or less like the language originally spoken by the Gypsy or Zingaro race. Several dialects of the Gypsy are to be found which still preserve along with a considerable number of seemingly original words certain curious grammatical forms, quite distinct from those of any other speech. Others are little more than jargons, in which a certain number of Gypsy words are accommodated to the grammatical forms of the languages of particular countries. In the foremost class of the pure Gypsy dialects, I have no hesitation in placing those of Russia, Wallachia, Bulgaria, and Transylvania. They are so alike that he who speaks one of them can make himself very well understood by those who speak any of the rest, from whence it may reasonably be inferred that none of them can differ much from the original Gypsy speech, so that when speaking of Gypsy language, any one of these may be taken as a standard. One of them I shall not mention, which I have selected for that purpose, more from fancy than any particular reason. The Gypsy language, then, or what with some qualification I may call such, may consist of some 3,000 words, the greater part of which are decidedly of Indian origin, being connected with the Sanskrit or some other Indian dialect. The rest consist of words picked up by the Gypsies from various languages in their wanderings from the East. It has two genders, masculine and feminine. O represents the masculine and I the feminine. For example, Burro Rai, a great gentleman; Bori Rani, a great lady. There is properly no indefinite article. Gajo or Gorjo, a man or Gentile.
O gajo,
the man. The noun has two numbers, the singular and the plural. It has various cases formed by postpositions, but has, strictly speaking, no genitive. It has prepositions as well as postpositions. Sometimes the preposition is used with the noun, and sometimes the postposition. For example, Kato Gav, from the town, Chungail Manochender, evil men from, i.e. from evil men. The verb has no infinitive. In lieu thereof, the conjunction that is placed before some person of some tense, I wish to go, is expressed in Gypsy by Kamav T. Jaw. Literally, I wish that I go. Thou wishest to go. Coms tejas. Thou wishest that thou goest. Common t jalan. They wish that they go. Necessity is expressed by the impersonal verb and the conjunction that. Hum tej. I must go.
lit,
I am that I go. Shan t jalan. They are that they go.
and so on.
There are words to denote the numbers from 1 up to 1,000. For the number 9, there are two words, nu and enio. Almost all the Gypsy numbers are decidedly connected with the Sanskrit. After these observations on what may be called the best preserved kind of Gypsy, I proceed to a lower kind, that of England. The English Gypsy speech is very scanty, amounting probably to not more than 1,400 words, the greater part of which seem to be of Indian origin. The rest form a strange medley taken by the Gypsies from various Eastern and Western languages. Some few are Arabic, many are Persian, some are Sclavo-Walachian, others genuine Sclavonian. Here and there a modern Greek or Hungarian word is discoverable. But in the whole English Gypsy tongue, I have never noted but one French word, namely, tas or das, by which some of the very old Gypsies occasionally call a cup. Their vocabulary being so limited, the Gypsies have of course words of their own only for the most common objects and ideas. As soon as they wish to express something beyond these, they must have recourse to English. And even to express some very common objects, ideas, and feelings, they are quite at a loss in their own tongue, and must either employ English words or very vague terms indeed. They have words for the sun and the moon, but they have no word for the stars. And when they wish to name them in Gypsy, they use a word answering to lights. They have a word for a horse and for a mare, but they have no word for a colt, which in some other dialects of the Gypsy is called kuro, and to express a colt, they make use of the words tano gry, a little horse, which after all may mean a pony. They have words for black, white, and red, but none for the less positive colors, none for gray, green, and yellow. They have no definite word either for hare or rabbit.
Shashoy,
by which they generally designate a rabbit, signifies a hare as well, and caunengro, a word invented to distinguish a hare, and which signifies earfellow, is no more applicable to a hare than to a rabbit, as both have long ears. They have no certain word either for tomorrow or yesterday, calico signifying both indifferently. A remarkable coincidence must here be mentioned, as it serves to show how closely related are Sanskrit and Gypsy. Shashoy and Kaliko are nearly of the same sound as the Sanskrit sasa and kalia, and exactly of the same import. For as the Gypsy Shashoy signifies both hare and rabbit, and Kaliko tomorrow as well as yesterday, so does the Sanskrit sasa signify both hare and rabbit, and kalia tomorrow as well as yesterday. The poverty of their language in nouns the Gypsies endeavor to remedy by the frequent use of the word engro. This word affixed to a noun or verb turns it into something figurative, by which they designate, seldom very appropriately, some object for which they have no positive name. Engro properly means a fellow, and angry, which is the feminine or neuter modification, a thing. When the noun or verb terminates in a vowel, engro is turned into mengro, and angry into mungri. I have already shown how, by affixing engro to cown, the Gypsies have invented a word to express a hare. In like manner, by affixing engro to pov, earth, they have coined a word for a potato, which they call pov engro or pov angry, earth fellow or thing. And by adding engro to rook, or mengro to ruko, they have really a very pretty figurative name for a squirrel, which they call rook engro or ruko mengro, literally a fellow of the tree. Pogramingri, a breaking thing, and pimingri, a drinking thing, by which they express, respectively, a mill and a teapot, will serve as examples of the manner by which they turn verbs into substantives. This method of finding names for objects, for which there are properly no terms in Gypsy, might be carried to a great length much farther, indeed, than the Gypsies are in the habit of carrying it. A slack rope dancer might be termed biditardrainasheloklamengros, or slightly drawn rope dancing fellow, a drum, duakosh kiranomengri, or a thing beaten by two sticks, a tambourine, anguster kiranimengri, or a thing beaten by the fingers, and a fife, muepidenamengri, or thing blown by the mouth. All these compound words, however, would be more or less indefinite, and far beyond the comprehension of the Gypsies in general. The verbs are very few, and with 2 or 3 exceptions expressive only of that which springs from what is physical and bodily, totally unconnected with the mind, for which, indeed, the English Gypsy has no word. The term used for mind, which is a modification of the Hungarian siv meaning heart. There are such verbs in this dialect as to eat, drink, walk, run, hear, see, live,
D,
but there are no such verbs as to hope, mean, hinder,
prove,
forbid, tease,
soothe.
There is the verb apasavello, I believe, but that word, which is Wallachian, properly means being trusted, and was incorporated in the Gypsy language from the Gypsies obtaining goods on trust from the Wallachians, which they never intended to pay for. There is the verb for love, kamova, but that word is expressive of physical desire, and is connected with the Sanskrit kama, or Cupid. Here, however, the English must not triumph over the Gypsies, as their own verb love is connected with a Sanskrit word signifying lust. One pure and abstract metaphysical verb the English Gypsy must be allowed to possess, namely, penchava, I think, a word of illustrious origin, being derived from the Persian pendashtan. The English Gypsies can count up to 6, and have the numerals for 10 and 20, but with those for 7,
8,
and 9, perhaps not 3 Gypsies in England are acquainted. When they wish to express those numerals in their own language, they have recourse to very uncouth and roundabout methods, saying for 7, dui trins tayek, 2 3s and 1, for 8, dui stores, or 2 4s, and for 9, desh sor but yek, or 10 all but 1. Yet at one time the English Gypsies possessed all the numerals as their Transylvanian, Wallachian, and Russian brethren still do. Even within the last 50 years there were Gypsies who could count up to 100. These were Tachi Romani, real Gypsies, of the old sacred black race, who never slept in a house, never entered a church, and who, on their death, beds, used to threaten their children with a curse, provided they buried them in a churchyard. The two last of them rest, it is believed, some 6 feet deep beneath the moss of a wild, hilly heath, called in Gypsy the Hevesky Tan, or place of holes. In English, Mousehold, near an ancient city, which the Gentiles call Norwich, and the Romans the Chone Gav, or the town of the hill. With respect to grammar, the English gypsy is perhaps in a worse condition than with respect to words. Attention is seldom paid to gender. Burrow Rye and Burrow Ronnie being said, though as Ronnie is feminine, Bory and not Burrow should be employed. The proper gypsy plural terminations are retained in nouns, but in declension prepositions are generally substituted for postpositions, and those prepositions English. The proper way of conjugating verbs is seldom or never observed, and the English method is followed. They say, I dick, I see, instead of dico. I dicked, I saw, instead of dicium. If I had dicked, instead of diciomes. Some of the peculiar features of gypsy grammar yet retained by the English gypsies will be found noted in the dictionary. I have dwelt at some length on the deficiencies and shattered condition of the English gypsy tongue. Justice, however, compels me to say that it is far purer and less deficient than several of the continental gypsy dialects. It preserves far more of original gypsy peculiarities than the French, Italian, and Spanish dialects, and its words retain more of the original gypsy form than the words of those three. Moreover, however scanty it may be, it is far more copious than the French or the Italian gypsy, though it must be owned that in respect to copiousness it is inferior to the Spanish gypsy, which is probably the richest in words of all the gypsy dialects in the world, having names for very many of the various beasts, birds, and creeping things, for most of the plants and fruits, for all the days of the week, and all the months in the year, whereas most other gypsy dialects, the English amongst them, have names for only a few common animals and insects, for a few common fruits and natural productions, none for the months, and only a name for a single day the Sabbath, which name is a modification of the modern Greek. Greek text. Though the English gypsy is generally spoken with a considerable alloy of English words and English grammatical forms, enough of its proper words and features remain to form genuine gypsy sentences, which shall be understood not only by the gypsies of England, but by those of Russia, Hungary, Wallachia, and even of Turkey. For example, Kek man kamov t jib bali mangerskinis, man kamov t jib weshenjigaloganes. I do not wish to live like a baptized person. 1. I wish to live like a dog of the wood. 2. It is clear-sounding and melodious, and well adapted to the purposes of poetry. Let him who doubts peruse attentively the following lines. Coin si dea. Coin si dato? Pucker monde dre romains. Tal monde pucker vavatut. Rosser mescri minri dea. Wardo mescro minro dato. A coin si dato. Coin si dea? Mondes puckered tut dre romains. Na pucker tut monde. Petulengro minro dato. Porona minri dea. Tachi romani si men, mondes puckered tut dre romains. Ta tuts puckered monde. The first 3 lines of the above ballad are perhaps the oldest specimen of English gypsy at present extant, and perhaps the purest. They are at least as old as the time of Elizabeth, and can pass among the Zigany in the heart of Russia, for Zygansky. The other lines are not so ancient. The piece is composed in a meter something like that of the ancient Sclavonian songs, and contains the questions which 2 strange gypsies, who suddenly meet, put to each other, and the answers which they return. In using the following vocabulary, the continental manner of pronouncing certain vowels will have to be observed. Thus Ava must be pronounced like Ava, according to the English style, Ker like care, Miro like Miro, Z like Z, and Puro as if it were written Puro. Romano Lavalil Wordbook of the Romany.
A.
Abri.
Add. Prep. Out.
Not within. Abroad.